So this is my story about how I stopped sleep paralysis. For those of you who don't know what sleep paralysis is, I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find a whole lot of pages that pop up, and medical pages and symptom websites to try and tell you what it is. And how they basically describe it, what they think, or what their theory is that you go to sleep and it triggers a type of sensor in the brain that tells your body that you're going to sleep, and that cuts off movement from your body, that you do not act out your dreams. Now what happens with sleep paralysis, it's an error, so to say, in this formula that gets portrayed, and that your body doesn't get that signal, but your brain goes into sleep mode, but you're still in a state of what they call the REM state, or REM state, or rapid eye movement is the full pronunciation. And what this is you're basically, your whole body is awake, and your mind is between an awake state and still in a sleep state, but your body is completely paralyzed. This is how they scientifically describe it, but if you go back to the most ancient records of this, you'll find things such as old hag syndrome, ghosts visiting in the medieval days, even here in South Africa call it the tokoloshi, and there's a lot of mythology behind it, there's a lot of skeptics around it, there's a lot of theoreticals around it of how different people have experienced it. And my experience, I would say 3 out of 5 people that I have asked if they know what sleep paralysis is, or if have they experienced it, their answer has always been yes. And that's scary. That's a scary statistic of how many people have gone through it and how many people have experienced it. My sleep paralysis started when I was around 17, 18 years old. There was a very significant event in my life that happened that, for some reason, that was like the landmark or the milestone in my life, that after that the sleep paralysis started. And someone very close to me, a person that was extremely close to me and dear to me, ended up molesting me. And it was from that moment on, I can remember the first night that I had the sleep paralysis. It was very much the same feeling as the night that I got molested. That fear of not being able to move, where you freeze, you can't do anything. But there were certain things that stood out from the sleep paralysis. I knew there was something in the room, an entity, a person maybe, but it had this very dark, evil sense to it, that there was something in the room. And I remember being completely terrified of whatever it was, and that sense of being helpless and not being able to do anything. When I broke out of the sleep paralysis, those of you who have had it would know that feeling of suddenly breaking out of it for the first time, or the first few times that it happens, that confusion, that fear that still lingers in the room. I kept telling myself that maybe it was just my mind couldn't handle what had happened to me, and my mind was trying to process what had happened to me, and it was translating into my dreams now, and it was okay, it was just normal. By the time it happened for the 3rd or 4th time, I started realizing that this was a problem and something was wrong. At first I thought there was something wrong with me, and I thought that I've lost it, I'm crazy, I need help. And I remember telling the first person, that was my father, and his reaction was quite unique to me, that I told him that I think I need help, and these things are happening to me and I don't know how to explain them, and I explained exactly to him how they were happening, and I asked him that I should maybe go and see someone, and I should get treated for this, I should get checked. And his answer to me was that he actually knows someone that I could speak to, and that person was a religious, spiritual person, a Christian, and at that time in my life, it wasn't really relevant to me. I was brought up in a Christian home, and I thought I believed in God, but that just wasn't an answer to me. It continued, the sleep paralysis, up into a point where my brother found out, not by me telling him, but he experienced it with me. And what happened was, the night I had to sleep next to my brother. I can't even remember why. And I remember it happening, and I remember coming out of it, and that's all I remembered. And the next morning my brother spoke to me, and he said to me that we needed to talk about what happened last night. And I asked him to explain to me what he experienced, and he said that my body was shaking, and it's like I was struggling. And when he touched me to try and ask me what was wrong, or to see if I was just having a nightmare, he could see that I was responding to his voice, but it's almost like I couldn't get out of the dream. And he said he felt something weird, something he couldn't explain as well. And eventually, when I broke out of it, he said the only words that I could mutter was, "It's here, it's in the room, it's in the room, it's here." And he says this completely terrified him as well. And he said to the point where the hairs on his neck were standing up. He said for some reason the only thing he could think of doing was reaching out for his Bible. And he started just reading any scripture out of his Bible. And apparently I completely calmed down, and I just went back to sleep. I can't even remember that night. The most significant sleep paralysis episode that I ever had was, and if I can explain to you the most common ones that I had, it was a very loud ringing in my ears. That's how I knew it started. A lot of people would say it's only when you sleep on your back. I had it when I was sleeping on my side, sleeping on my front. Didn't matter how I slept, it happened to me. One of the biggest alarms, if you could call it that, was my ears ringing and a strange tingling vibration feeling in my body, like pins and needles, and I was always paralyzed in it. I could never move. I tried everything to move, an arm and a finger. It's almost like I tried to shut my eyes, but I couldn't shut my eyes because I was afraid of what I might see. And the night that was most significant to me, I did see something, and it was the first time that I could see something clear, and it was something you could describe out of most of movies we see, games we play, portrayals in books, and I couldn't describe it. I can see the face, but it's difficult to describe it. It was almost like it was human, but it was also alien, and it was also demonic, if you could describe it. The scariest thing to me was, I have seen people draw what they've seen in sleep paralysis. I've heard people explain what they've seen in sleep paralysis, and I've heard people describe what I have seen. You can call it coincidence if you want, but to me, the odds and the statistics of that happening is highly unlikely. It got to a point where I got used to it, but that night was the most significant, where I actually saw, I could put a face on what was terrorizing me at night. Later on, I met a few people in my life, specifically my wife. When I met her, I started getting a lot more involved with religious and spiritual communities in the Christian religion, and I was never really interested in it, but I was open to it. I had an open mind. A lot of people that know me will know that I have an open mind to different things, trying out new things. And it was one night specifically where my brother-in-law asked me to join him at one of his old churches that he used to go to. And I went to this church with him that night, and I remember wanting to sit as far back as I could. I didn't like people approaching me in a church and asking me questions and all of these type of things. And we sat in the mid row. I was listening to the service, and it wasn't the same. This pastor that was preaching was different. It's almost like I could see his passion, I could feel his passion. It wasn't just another night of business or work for him. And this pastor started singling people out of the church and praying for them. And what was happening to these people, I was highly skeptical about. People were falling over. People were speaking in tongues, what that community refers to. And I didn't understand it. I was completely freaked out by it. I didn't really know if I wanted to be there. And I remember saying to myself, please don't come to me, please don't come to me, don't call me out. And there was a moment when the pastor walked past where I was sitting, and he stopped. And he stopped dead in his tracks, and he turned around and he looked at me and he said, "What is your name?" And I barely uttered my name to him, and he said, "Come to the front with me." And I remember not wanting to, but it was almost like I didn't have control of my body. I lunged out of my seat towards the front, and I found myself standing in front of this whole church, a place where I didn't see myself standing ever. And the pastor asked me, "What do you want me to pray for you?" And in my head I was thinking, I didn't ask to go up, I didn't ask you to pray for me, but all that I could utter for some reason was the evil in my life. And I will never forget the expression on his face. It was almost like I had said exactly what he had heard before I said it. And when I said it, it is also like he knew exactly what to do. And I remember him putting his hand on my shoulder and gently blowing on my forehead. And when he did that, I found myself on the floor, and I couldn't explain how I felt, but my face was completely wet, and when I felt my face, it was just tears coming out of my eyes uncontrollably, and I was just crying and sobbing. I didn't have a reason why, but I was. I couldn't really hear anything that was going on. It was like everything was just faded out, and I felt this complete peace and freedom. And afterwards, my brother-in-law came to me and he said, "Man, I can't believe what happened." And I just stood there in shock, and he was like, "Did you hear what that pastor said?" And I said, "No, I didn't. Everything was blurred out." And he told me what the pastor said. And the pastor said, "Church, this young man has been terrorized by a legion of demons." I still didn't believe it. I was still skeptical about it until I went and spoke to him afterwards. And he told me that he knew what I was going through. And I need to know that everything that was happening to me and all those demons that were terrorizing me were now in a bottomless pit. And I still didn't know how to respond. All I said was thank you. Like he did some service to me, which he did. And I remember that night I went home, and I still didn't know what to say, and I still didn't know what to think. And I went to bed that night, and I went to sleep, and I woke up, and it was sleep paralysis again. But it was different this time. I had control over my body, and I sat up out of my sleep paralysis, and I boldly said, and I don't even know why I did this, and I said that my God who has saved me is bigger than you. And it was like immediately everything in that room just went away. The fear, the presence, everything just stopped, and it was gone. And I remember putting my head down that night in that bed, and I was smiling, because for the first time in my life I had control over it. From there on out, my life completely changed. And I knew that there was power in what I had said, and there was definitely power in the things that were terrorizing me. I could not deny it. And that is how I came closer to finding out the truth about this. And it's been years, and I've researched it, I've watched videos on it, I've heard what doctors with PhDs and masters have said about this. And it all comes back to the truth of what it really is and what we need to realize what it is. While I sit here, I have not had sleep paralysis to the extent of what I used to have it ever again. I've had attacks and I've had visitations, but I've never had sleep paralysis again. And many doctors will tell you that you can achieve this through a healthy lifestyle and good sleep, and which I agree with. It's good to have a healthy lifestyle. It's good to get enough rest and sleep. I guess it might help changing your lifestyle a little bit, but it will never stop it completely. The only answer to stopping it completely is Jesus Christ. And I'm not talking about the Jesus Christ that religion is forcing on everyone. I'm talking about the Jesus Christ that has a relationship with you. The one who died for our sins, and the one who came to set us free from the dark principalities that are truly real and active in this world. And I know many people will come against me for this. I know people will laugh at this. Some people will be infuriated by it. But I'm not out to convince anyone. I'm not out to try and make anyone part of my belief. I'm doing this video to help those who are going through sleep paralysis and who have experienced what I experienced, because I know what it does to you, and I know how terrified you are. And I'm telling you, if you do not believe what I'm saying, when it happens to you again, proclaim with all your heart that Jesus Christ is your Savior, and that He is bigger than the entities that are terrorizing you, and I promise you it will go away. That's all you have to do. That's all that you have to do to stop this. I just want to end this with saying that I don't think I got sleep paralysis because I got molested, or because of all of these things that were in my life, the partying or drugs or sexual immorality. I think it happened because I wasn't aware of what it was. I didn't know what the truth was, and that's why it happened. I think that if we learn what the truth really is, we'll know how to address these type of things that happen, and that is the most important thing. There are people out there who are promoting sleep paralysis, who are trying to help people have lucid dreaming. They don't know what they're opening doors to. There's a reason that there are people who experience this, who take lucid drugs, people who take things that help you to hallucinate. There is a reason that God came to people in dreams, because it's a different realm that we don't understand. And I think when we learn this truth, that's when our eyes start to open. So I just urge you to seek it, and to go and look for these things in wherever you may want to. And I hope that you find the truth, and I will pray that you find the truth.